My undergraduate degree, I had finished that and started working a little more at the firm. Luckily, being able to work in a firm, I realized that I wanted to kind of go down that career path of law, because when I first graduated with my business degree, didn't really have an idea of what I wanted to do, but I did take a couple of law courses throughout my undergrad and realized that it was something that I had an interest in, and I thought that it might be a career that I would enjoy. So started working at a local firm. Um, was a lovely experience. Everyone was very kind. Um, the ability to learn and getting around people that were like-minded uh, was great. And so that began the process of trying to study for my LSAT. Yeah, that was quite an experience. I did my LSAT, studied for about 6 months, just missed the mark on what the average acceptance would have been for the University of New Brunswick, which is kind of where I wanted to go. So from there, I basically signed up for a program called the Blueprint, which was based in the States, I think it was. And basically, it was a year program. They guarantee you a 10-point increase. And if you didn't get that, you get your money back, which is kind of why I was like, oh, perfect. So started that process. Uh, and throughout that, I was considering, other options. Luckily, I worked with somebody who actually went to Bond and studied there, and then I knew somebody else that went to Australia to study law. And I think oddly enough, there was an ad that came up online, and it was Austrac. And so after seeing that, I started asking around the firm and was like, what was your experience like? Like, did you enjoy it? Is this something that you would recommend? And every person that I spoke to was like, do it. Like, yeah, you're not going to regret it. It's something that they really enjoyed. They learned a lot about themselves and then came back to Canada to practice. So seeing that or hearing that and then seeing the ads, I had sent an email, I think, to Austrek, and that is when Casey and I kind of touched point. Um, and Casey and Austrek were lovely from basically start to finish to getting me here. Um, so really what had happened then was Casey had answered any question that I would have, whether it was 9 in the morning or 11 o'clock at night that I was emailing. She was always kind and had an answer for everything. So what they did was really kind of break down any stressful aspect of the application process. So they talked about what I needed to do, things that I needed to secure, what the process was going to be like, gave me some warnings, kind of, watch out for this, try and plan ahead, get your housing sorted, things like that. Because at that time it was just after COVID, housing crisis was going on, so it was definitely a concern. But yeah, we talked through the admission process, kind of checked all the boxes, got my international healthcare coverage taken care of, things like that, and then basically submitted an application. So, Casey was very, very helpful in kind of deciding what university I should apply to based on personality, certain questions that, what I was looking for, kind of the school that I would like to see, what courses would be like, uh, did I want to come back to Canada and things like that, what was my focus. So once we kind of ironed out all those details, we established that Griffith University would be the place for me. Uh, Sent in an application, got accepted, and then that's when things kind of got real. Got moved, packed up my stuff, and kind of moved to the other side of the world, which was it was a lot to take in. Like I know that the hard part was kind of over to some degree, but like moving my entire life to the other side of the world was a lot. And that's something that if you do apply and you do go, it's just be prepared for that kind of that emotion, that feeling to kind of set in, whether it be packing your bags or touching down in Australia or walking your first class. So fast forward about a year now, so it's been a great experience. When I first arrived, it was hot, didn't really know what to do. Got to my student accommodation, was just unpacking. Um, I'd say some things just to kind of be prepared for is not knowing where anything is. Things take a lot longer to kind of find your way around. What is a 5-minute drive here is probably like a 45-minute walk, so just be prepared for that. Um, and then yeah, it's been a great experience. So I think I got here about 2 weeks before class started, and so I had 2 weeks to kind of get my feet underneath me, and then had morning tea with the dean and the program director and some fellow students and some students who were about to graduate, which is when I initially first met Neel. So it was good to kind of have. I think it was Neel and somebody else there. Can't remember. Sorry, terrible memory. But it was great to have them there because they kind of talked about the ins and outs of getting around the university and what to do, what not to do, and just trying to remember to enjoy yourself is kind of the biggest thing. Like, don't don't focus on the fact that you're away from home. Focus on the fact you're in Australia and you're in law school and you're here to enjoy it and learn. And that was a really reassuring, kind of like a common comment by them. So that was thankful because a lot of the time and a lot of the fellow students that were new there were focusing on the fact that they were away from home and not that they were about to start this great journey. So thank you, Neil. That was great. Um, but yeah, and then so yeah, the university's been great. The program director, Genevieve, she is fantastic. Any question, concern, doubt, anything along those lines that I've had, Genevieve and Therese Wilson is the dean. They've been there to support through and through. Um, Courses have been great. Program director, dean's been great, and fellow students have been lovely. So at the end of the day, I think you're here, you're focused on yourself, but at the same time, you've got a cohort of people that are doing the exact same thing. They're away from their family. They're learning something new. Law is a challenging career. Um, I always had this preconception that law students were vicious, that it was going to be a dog eat dog world, and nobody was going to help. Like, and I heard horror stories about other students giving wrong notes to students to get the advantage. Um, but I haven't experienced that, and I'm thankful that I haven't. Everyone's been very supportive. It's more so kind of succeeding together and learning as a cohort and hoping to see one another in the profession at a later stage. So that's kind of the nutshell of what it's been like since I've been here. Other things have been going on, just like trying to get better housing and things like that, which is it's a challenge, but I think it's a challenge anywhere you are. So
Thank you, Daniel. I think that's wonderful too, that you two almost had a pass the torch moment meeting at tea. Yeah. Neel, I'll let
yeah,
you come on and introduce yourself and tell a little bit about your story. And then I'd love to ask you two some questions. Let me get your slide up here.
Sure. Yes, me and Daniel met at morning tea, which is so interesting that we're here now because we're definitely at different stages, but it feels like kind of the same stage in many ways, right? So my name is Neel. I am from Surrey, BC. I think somebody else in this chat was also from Surrey. So I attended Simon Fraser University and I majored in criminology and I got my minor in sociology. I always knew that I wanted to go into law. I just wasn't quite sure how I wanted to go around to do that. And so something that really helped me kind of solidify that I wanted to do this is that I volunteered as a court runner for the Vancouver Downtown Community Courts. And if you live in Vancouver, I think it's a really great position to do to just get more familiar with the court proceedings, get more familiar with the terminology people use, and how courtesy you have to be in terms of talking to individuals within the court. And that really solidified to me that I wanted to go into something like litigation related, and really kind of helped me shape kind of my legal career at an early stage. And at that point, I did my LSAT. After I was done my undergrad, I was able to get into a couple of schools in Canada. I was waitlisted for some. But the one thing and the reason why I actually ended up going to Australia was because I went to this law fair. And it was like an international law fair, and there was a lot of schools from Australia. And at the time, the individual that was kind of like, I guess you could say, the international advisor for Griffith, I was able to speak to her. And honestly, from everything that she had said and everything that she had spoken about the program, it just really did feel like the right fit for me. So even though maybe I could have waited out or I could have reapplied the year after to get into possibly a school in Canada, something about going to Australia really did resonate with me, which is why I ended up pursuing that route and applying to Griffith. I ended up getting in, and I also received the International Student Academic Excellence Scholarship, which kind of helped with that financing. I believe at the time it was 25% of your full tuition, So that's a lot of money that, was kind of taken off. And in many ways, after the fact that, we were in COVID and I wasn't actually physically able to go to Australia. So I started online. Um, it was relatively the same, almost the same price as what I would have paid if I'd went to a Canadian school here. And so for me, I think just keeping, tuition in mind, keeping in the fact that I was going to be able to start my studies at home kind of just made me want to go forward with it. I then applied, got in. I did the first year and a half online. So basically, more than half of my degree online. I did the last 2 semesters in Australia. And that's when I actually went to Australia. And it was probably one of the best experiences of my life. I reflect back on the time that I spent there in such a great way because not only was I able to actually see the students that I was attending classes with and was building these relationships online with, um, I was actually able to see the campus and meet my professors in person and be able to actually really take in the law school experience. Um, Despite obviously it being online, Griffith was really good at still providing opportunities. So even though I was at the time doing it online during COVID, and this is important to mention that I was able to participate in one of the moots that was happening in Canada. So even though like the school obviously had no reason to give opportunities like that, and a lot of a lot of universities in Australia were not participating in this moot, but it's called the Boer-Alaskan moot, and it's one that is really big and influential to Canadian law schools, and a lot of them participate in it. And so the fact that I was able to participate in it, even if I wasn't, technically going to a Canadian school, was a really good experience for me. And from there, when I ended up going to Australia, I was able to then kind of resurrect, you could say, the Canadian Law Students Association. I served as president for, I would say, about 2 semesters until then Daniel took over as president. And it was a really great experience because we were able to actually focus in on what the students wanted, especially after COVID. It was kind of like this unknown territory. We were all brand new there. There wasn't a lot of support. Nobody kind of knew what was going to happen, especially because a lot of people that had graduated and came back were still looking for articling positions at the time, just because with COVID, the job market was so tight. And so we were kind of almost in this unknown, and there wasn't a lot of people to reach out to for assistance or help. So despite all those challenges and obviously moving to Australia, it was a really fun experience and I really enjoyed doing it. It was definitely out of my comfort zone, but very necessary. One of the reasons why I decided to come back to Canada was it I think honestly, I really just missed being at home with my family and my friends. Let's say I could have shipped all of my family and my friends to Australia, I definitely would have stayed because I think just the overall lifestyle of living in Australia and the people that live where I lived in the Gold Coast and how kind of connected everything is and how easy it is to get around, it was a really good fit for me personally. I didn't have a car for those 2 semesters, and I never had any reason to really be like, oh my God, I need a car. Whereas here, when you live in the lower mainland, it's like you need a car to be able to go anywhere really. And so that's one of the nice parts of going to Griffith was it was on the Gold Coast. It was located very central to where the tram is located, and you were able to basically access every place that you wanted to. Um, I also lived on campus, which is people's nightmare that were in my program. Everybody, when I just told them that I was living on campus, told me that I was crazy. But it was actually really interesting, and it really helped me meet a lot of friends. It was, I think, for people who are like, I would say more extroverted or people that just want to feel some normalcy. Like for me, I live in a big family. So I knew that it would be hard for me to go and just move somewhere where I was living alone and kind of isolated. I needed to be around people. And so I met a lot of people that were in my program, but a lot of like lifelong friends who I talk to still frequently in and outside of law school. And so that was really great.